And shout out to Avi. He's really passionate, really great guy, an amazing visionary person, super driven.
Yeah.
Any interview you can get from Avi Suarez is really good, worth watching. Like you
Javi
learn a lot.
can like he
My
can
God.
give energy. Like I imagine, like he would go to like Alaska and he convinced the Eskimos to start producing ice or something. You know, like he can convince anybody. Like he's such a engaging and motivating person. Really, it's a bomb of energy. Great guy.
Just yeah, quick thing. I remember that when he quit the company and he was starting into like investing and things. And I reached out to him because I wanted to hear something about product. We were working on an internal product on MarsBased, right? And it was an idea, prototype, and so on and so forth. And he listened to my pitch. It's like, okay, I will invest. I was like, no, we're not looking for investment. But he's so, when he sees a thing, he just goes and does it. But anyways, this is more about you, not so much about Happy. So then this year, shit hit the fan. For a travel company, you were deeply impacted, right? So
Yeah.
how was it? And when did you start noticing? Did you start noticing before, right? I'm pretty sure you saw it before. You saw it coming.
Yes and no. So I tell you what I mean. So I traveled to London mid-February. So I think it was, something like 15, 16 of February. So
Yeah.
go back to that moment. We were already talking about, especially as a travel company, we were already talking about the virus, about COVID. At that time, Italy probably had like 4 cases and no death yet. And it was all China. It was all a China thing. Like it wasn't really a threat here in Europe or in the US. So I went to Sky and I remember that, I don't know why, but I went to Carrefour, you know, like the supermarket, and I bought a mask. I needed the mask and I couldn't think of any other place. So I bought like the, do-it-yourself kind of masks. And I wore it in the plane. Everybody looked at me like I'm a crazy person, which, I am, but guess what?
But they don't know it.
Yeah. So already mid-February, I had like a bit of just looking at numbers, right, and reading about it and seeing that. You remember these crazy videos from China, which luckily never happened in the West, of like people just collapsing in the street, and like it was, if you actually follow that, it was pretty scary already back then. But I interviewed for Sky. You can see this interview on YouTube, like it was a live interview, and
Yeah.
like a complete idiot, because I say, the guy wants to talk about COVID, and I want to talk about a release we did, like TravelPerk, which is our carbon offset, a carbon neutral product, makes your entire trip carbon neutral. And I care a lot about the environment. I want to talk about that, and he wanted to talk about the virus. I'm like, no, forget the virus. Let's talk about TravelPerk. So, and then in these few segments where I do talk about the virus, I think I said something like, at the moment, it's impacting at 10%. So that was true for end of February, beginning of March. We saw a small 10% impact. We're still growing massively. Q1, we grew more than 3 times on revenue year on year. In Q1, right, including March.
Was it accumulated, or because?
So it was January, February were amazing, and then March we started to get a hit.
March was already the dip, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we had like two first weeks of March were kind of okay-ish, and then the second 2 weeks were just horrible. So it hit us fast, and we did see the signs. But I'm a very optimistic person. I think you have to be in order to kind of do this crazy job that we're doing. So I was like, yeah, it's here, but maybe like so I was like optimistic. And then finally, beginning of March, we sat down and we realized as a leadership team that it's a serious thing. We have to put aside the optimism and have a plan. And we did a war game on a weekend. We just met for the weekend. We spent the whole weekend together in the office.
Who was it?
War game, the leadership team.
Okay, leadership team. Yeah, correct.
Yeah. And we war game the whole thing. We decided to do a fire drill of basically, because our biggest fear at the time, our office was the office with the largest amount of people in Barcelona. It's this ugly Torre Agbar, Torre Glorias, it's called now. So it has thousands and thousands of employees of other companies. The biggest fear at the time was not somebody getting infected, but one person in the whole building catching it. And if they closed down the whole building, we were not ready for remote work. We were not a company that ever did remote. So the biggest fear at the time was, how do we switch from always in the office to full remote? And what are the gaps? So we decided to fire drill it. We just announced randomly on one morning that everybody has to stay home and work from home. And we checked what are the gaps. This person didn't have a computer. This person didn't have a screen. Their internet is too slow. So they're sharing a room with 3 children. And if the kids don't go to school, what do you do? So we discovered all of these issues, and then we created our own internal FNAC, or what do you call it? Like how do you call this?
Like a marketplace. Yeah.
Where we just delivered. We rented 3 vans and we just drove around the city and delivered.
Oh, wow.
And we built home offices for, like, we have 500 employees, right? So it's not a small operation. And we built home offices for everybody in 1 weekend. And so we identified the gaps. We had a plan, and then over a weekend we just built home offices for everybody. We just literally took the office away. We took desks and screens and stuff, just like distributed the office to people's homes, 4G dongles and everything we need to do to get it done. And within a weekend, we had everybody had a workable home office, and then we were ready for the, at least for the lockdown.
That's amazing. Before we get into the plan and the execution, right? How did you communicate it? Let's start from the beginning. When do you think it's the right time, or how to calculate the right time to communicate a hard decision, right? If you do it too early, you might create unrest. If you do it too late, people are going to find out and they're going to freak the fuck out as well, right? So how do you find the right time to do it? When did you do it, and how did you do it? What channels? Was it like a post on your internal tool? Was it an all hands meeting?
So we are a very, very transparent company. And I know many companies, probably all companies say that, but we actually mean it. And I'm sure that everybody you ask who works at the company will agree. So our approach is always to share as early as possible, but not earlier, right? So for example, what I mean is people have questions, and especially when it's like we talk about the pandemic, switching to remote work, what does it mean about our jobs? We are in the literally the most hit industry. So obviously people have questions, and if all of your answers is I don't know yet, then you're adding more doubt than you're actually solving anything. So that's too early, right? But if you have some of the answers, and maybe some of the other answers, you can say, I don't know yet, but I'll get back to you whenever I do. And you don't forget to get back to them, then I would do it as early as you have this initial answer. So we had a all hands in March already, and I was very open and transparent about what does it mean for the company, and what I know and what I didn't know, which was actually more than what I knew. But I believe that always, if you can be as transparent as possible, that's always the right approach. I don't get why leaders would keep things secret. It's just weird to me. So it's much easier.
Give us 2 examples of things you did according to your definition of transparency. Like you said, every company says it's transparent, but we walk the talk, right?
Yeah.
What are 2 things you do to ensure transparency runs in the company?
So I'll give you one pre kind of COVID and one, from the COVID crisis. Pre-COVID, we talk about, let's say we fundraise. We talk about all the details, valuation, who invested, how much, what, price per share, because everybody's a shareholder, right? So they need to know what does it mean for them. We talk about revenue numbers on a weekly basis. Everything is available. The only topic that is more protected is people, personal matters, HR. But other than this, everything is available. The strategy is available. Our OKRs are publicly available within the company. So we share everything. So that's, it's literally like we do every week on Friday, and end of the week we call it, so all hands meeting with the entire company. It's a Zoom now, unfortunately, but typically we do it in person. And we talk about what happened last week, what is going to happen next week, and we share stuff. And the stuff could be numbers, could be good or bad thing that happened, and we just very openly share it with the entire team, and it creates an amazing culture. So that's business as usual. During COVID, I mean, of course, there are a lot of sensitive matters that we had to share. In my opinion, we announced an ERTE, and I felt that I needed to explain to them. Everybody's Spanish in this, or should I explain a bit what? It's like a furlough.
It's a furlough.
So a furlough process where people work less hours and get paid partially by the government and partially by us. Mm-hmm. So we announced an ERTE, but we did a bit unusual ERTE because the hit was too big, in my opinion, and the Spanish government is just useless in helping startups. It's not different to many other governments. I'm not making a political statement.
Yeah, let's bring politics to Twitter.
Yeah.
That's where we operate better.
But it's important to know that they could do much better to help startups. And frankly, a lot of other companies, but startups like us. I mean, we are not a profitable business even before this thing, and I have 400. We started the crisis with almost 500 employees, and these are people with jobs that need to pay rent, and need to buy food for the kids. So some kind of help, especially because the crisis was imposed on us. It's not something that we chose to go into lockdown. It's not of the fault of the execution in the company. So anyway, I needed to walk them through this process, and one of the elements was the government was going to be this, but we are going to actually top up. So every employee of TravelPerk was guaranteed at least 80% of their salary, regardless of the ERTE implications. And for them to understand what it means, I walked them through a board meeting, and what did the board have, what was the opinion of the board, what was my opinion, and super openly and as much as I can be, right, because some stuff is sensitive. And I think it creates a lot of engagement and trust, and just a better culture. Plus, it's more pleasant, right? Like I don't get like you enjoy it more when you work as a team and you share stuff instead of siloing people into different areas of kind of on a need to know basis. Like this is just not how we operate.
You got a leadership team, you mentioned.
Yeah.
But in times of crisis, one thing that we have seen historically in companies, or we're seeing now, there are some people who are natural born leaders and who might have stepped up in the company. Have you found also that certain people in the company have stepped up and become leaders in any areas? They're like, wow, that was totally unexpected. And have you accommodated growth for these kind of people who wanted to sort of lead other initiatives beyond their responsibilities?
Yeah, yes and no. What I mean by that is we operate very bottom up in the company. Mm-hmm. So the fact that we have a leadership team doesn't mean that we actually make any decisions. The way we operate as a company, we set goals, like number goals.
Yeah.
This is more or less what we want to achieve next quarter or next year, and this is our strategy. So we share the strategy and the high level goals with the wider team, and then we ask them to come up with how they can help contribute to that, right? So it's a top down in the sense of goal setting, and then bottom up in the sense of deciding what to do. So they are free. The squads are free to decide within reason what they want to work on, as long as it advances the strategy or the goals. So in a way, we already built like this, and you just saw more kind of people initiatives related to COVID come up, but the structure was already there at one point. So it wasn't different than normal times.
And how about let's get into the plan, like the execution, right? I assume a company like yours being hit so heavily, or the travel sector altogether, right? It's been hit very heavily. And we know the difference between a peacetime CEO and a wartime CEO, right? And you might have, I don't know if you became a wartime CEO, but it's wartime. It's wartime now. We're in a crisis, or there's an even bigger economic crisis coming. There's, a lot of things are not regulated, not clear. There's huge uncertainty, companies like stocks plummeting and a lot of unrest. Let's put it this way to sort of simplify. I know I'm oversimplifying, but let's keep it simple. So how have you allowed for the, company culture sort of defines how you're expected to behave in terms of finding your own way, doing your tasks, but have you allowed people to stray from company culture, or your company culture is broad enough to kind of like have people find their own ways within it? Have you adapted new things because of the pandemic? Have you been more flexible, or how has this been affected?
Definitely, yes. I mean, as I mentioned before, we for example never did remote. I mean, we lost great people because we stuck to our never remote. And I know you and I differ on that. At least used to.
No worries, we were not going for the same people.
Yeah. But my take was that our culture cannot exist without physical interaction, and the serendipity that comes from bumping into a person in the kitchen and who is not in your team, and just having a chat and building a friendship. So
I agree.
We were very disciplined and we did lose great people that I wish we hadn't lost because we were not flexible around that. And now we are a full remote company. It will not stay like this. So it's not something I'm going to keep for much longer. And we already have announced how we're going to work after the pandemic, after the restrictions are over. We're going to move to a hybrid model, like many other companies, I think, which have learned that you can actually find a middle ground, I think, in between. But this is a huge change, and So that's one. And the second one is you had to, I mean, I think the humane thing to do was to give people more space. People were stuck in horrible situations in many cases, and we all suffered. Like, it's not like one person had, sometimes you have a person in your team that goes through like a hard time and you help them. But now we had literally everybody in the world, at least in the country, at least, going through very hard time. And naturally people focused internally, and it was important to give them the space, So for example, a person who has a family member who is sick, with COVID or with something else that they need help with. A person who is alone, who just relocated. Imagine like this, that we have more than 80% of the team is not from here. So they relocate to work at TravelPerk. And I said, we never did remote. So we have a lot of people from all around the world relocated to Barcelona. Some of them relocated. I mean, half the team was hired in the last 12 months. Half the team.
Did they relocate back, even if temporarily, or?
Some people did go back for because of that, but many people got stuck here. So we have, a person moved from Brazil, and literally like a week after they moved, lockdown. So they don't know anybody. Imagine it, you move from Brazil to Barcelona, you literally know nobody. You haven't met your colleagues. You're stuck in a small apartment. This is a tough situation.
Well, at least it's not Helsinki. It's not Iceland or something like that. I mean, it could be worse. We could always be worse. But to your point.
Well, in Helsinki, you're allowed to go out to work out, for example.
Yeah, you don't want to go out though in Helsinki in March, but
I mean, I definitely don't want to stay in an apartment, like in a 60 meters apartment for 3 months. That's
right.
Also,
people
with kids, people with so we did give people a lot of room to breathe. We even defined a breathing period where we relaxed a lot of the rules to just make sure that people get the chance to breathe. And we try to think long term, and pushing people to remain at the same level of productivity when the pandemic happens is so short term that we prefer to sacrifice 1 or 2 quarters in order to gain kind of long term health, mental health in this case. So we let people have more breathing space and focus internally, focus on the families, which I think is the responsibility of all leaders to think about. Are you giving enough space for your team, or you're just pushing them for performance, which will maybe deliver the results that you need short term, but in my opinion will kill your culture long term.
Correct. And that brings me to my next point. So thank you for the assist, which is mental health, right? I mean, we as a company have been doing full remote, no office for 7 years. And even like that, we have been hit by the crisis just because people had to work remotely forcefully, right? And their spouses that are working on the health sector, they were at risk. They had their 3 children at home. They couldn't see their, the parents or the relatives. So they couldn't see people. There was huge stress, right? So how, in this period that we all needed that extra empathy, right? How have you dealt with this? And most of all, most importantly, which is one thing that's really difficult to identify in remote working cultures, is when somebody is in distress. Because you don't see them in the office. You don't see when they're frowning, if they're crying in the, in the kitchen or something like that, or if they're in their desk like this. By being remote, one can switch off all communications, just stick to chat, and you will never see they are depressed, they are crying, they're frustrated. How have you identified and dealt with these situations during this period?
Yeah. So I don't know if I have the magic bullet, but it's extremely difficult, and I agree with you. We do surveys. We use a tool to do daily surveys, poll surveys. It's not very long, but how are you doing? How are you feeling? So that's one path. You can look at especially the trend. Somebody who's always happy and is a drop in a trend. You can immediately try and see what's going on. But a lot of it is, again, going back, and it sounds like I'm repeating myself, but it is what it is. It's the DNA matters, and the culture matters. And a culture of managers who actually care about the people in their teams. And this is the kind of manager that makes the kind of person in general that is very successful at TravelPerk, is a person who thinks as a team, is a good person. It's literally a value for us. Like our third value is be a good person. So how can you be a good person and a good leader if you don't care about the people in your team? So enforcing that culture before COVID paid dividends during the crisis. And by the way, I don't think it's something that can last forever. Like our culture has supported that for the first 6-7 months. I'm worried that if this thing continues much longer, and if we keep everybody, not just in our company, overall in the society, I think a lot of the problems we see now in the world in general come from this isolation and how human connection is now reduced to a transaction conversation on Zoom. and empathy is lost or reduced in many cases. So I think so far it got us to here, and we kept together and we kept as a team. But I'm worried that if this thing continues for much longer, no team can survive this kind of isolation and disconnection.
And how about the transmission of the company culture? In this case, it seems like your company culture helps a lot. And I'm sorry to double down on company culture, but I think that's a great way to keep companies afloat. And one thing I like about you is how transparent you are, not only inwards towards the company, but also outwards, right? You give a lot of interviews, you're very active on Twitter, and you share your views and thoughts and a lot of things of the company that we wouldn't have known otherwise, right? So talk about leadership, right? I have found, speaking to a lot of people, especially in the beginning of the crisis, I interviewed a lot of people for StartGrind. I interviewed a lot of people for the MarsBased podcast. And even I asked for advice for people because this is the first crisis for me as a business owner, right? So I called a few people that, reputed and seasoned CTOs, CEOs, blah, blah, just to ask for the advice. What do you do what are you expected to do, to say? And a lot of the conversations boil down to, first of all, company culture. Second is leadership, right? How to just be yourself, be a good leader, be transparent, communicate, and anticipate problems. How did you learn how to sort of face these situations? And what did you apply you yourself as a CEO of a company?
Yeah, so first, I want to be careful not to take too much credit for myself, right? I mean, we're in the middle of the crisis, and the jury's still out, as the Americans say, right? I mean, if we were successful in surviving it or not, my guess and my money is obviously betting that yes, but I want to be careful not to take too much credit for the team or for myself on this one. Now, having said that, the approach, so first in terms of transparency and kind of being outspoken or having no issue in sharing stuff, I guess it's so I have a lot of weaknesses and some strength in my character, and this is one of the few strengths I have. It's just it's comfortable for me to talk about topics openly. If it's not comfortable for you, I would argue that you should work on that, because authenticity is important, in my opinion. And it's also easier to understand when you actually say what you mean, instead of trying to kind of be diplomatic or think about the strategic implication of, I said this, just speak out and be honest. And I think good things happen. I learned from my experience. So if you don't have it, I would argue that it's important to gain this skill to be authentic and open. Why did I change? I stopped assuming that people know what's going on. I think that's probably one of the biggest changes personally, because again, we had to switch this from this physical to remote world. In a physical world, it's easier to understand what's going on. You feel you're in the office, you feel the vibe, you speak with people, you attend the end of the week in person. I mean, we had the whole company sitting in the room and every week. So it's easier to know what's going on. Now you're isolated in your home, and you only speak with people on like a project or with your squad, and it's much easier to kind of drift away from the company. So I needed to, and it wasn't obvious for me at the beginning, but I had to kind of, at one point, I got this feedback from somebody in my team. Don't assume that people actually know what's going on, and don't assume they have the same picture that you have in your brain, not because they cannot have it, just because they don't have all the data points, the inputs that you did. So oversharing. At the beginning of the crisis, we had sometimes 2 or 3 times per week a Zoom call with the whole company. Just I would tell bad jokes and people would laugh because they want to make me happy. So
uncomfortably laughing, right? That's like,
yeah.
I'm sure he should be sharing something else, not jokes, but.
and we brought a magician and somebody sang, and one guy is a great guitar player, so he played the guitar. We just worked together,
All right.
But through these sessions, we also shared some stuff that, and I used this opportunity to overshare stuff that for me was obvious because this is my day to day. But it might not be obvious for a designer who's focused on a part of the product, who didn't think about the implication of ELTE for the customer support person, for example. So oversharing and not assuming that, or actually assuming that nobody knows. So assuming that nobody has the picture that you have in your brain, and for that reason, oversharing everything and repeating yourself many, many times. was an important adjustment that I personally needed to do. But overall, I would go back to preferring to be explicit and transparent versus implicit and kind of siloed in your communication. I think is a great strategy.
Let's talk about present and future of the travel industry, right? You and I have been traveling during the summer. I was greatly inspired when I saw your tweets and said, like, everything's normal this year. Like, the plane's not full. There's a lot of regulations, sanitizer everywhere. So in a sense, it kind of like calmed me down. And then, of
Did
course,
I lie or was it true? Was it like I described?
I traveled with fucking Vueling and it was 120% full. And no, with Vueling it was horrible. So, but then I traveled with other airlines and they were all right, right? They were all right. The plane was not full, but like Vueling was very bad in that regard. But anyways, let's not talk about Vueling. Everybody knows that I'm not very friends with them. But you're right. There's one sort of complicity in meeting face to face, right? That you don't get out of a Zoom thing, no. Right? So where do you see yourselves now? Because I've been sort of reading studies. I've even seen it in our clients, for instance, that they are not back to pre-COVID levels. Most of them, e-commerces, even in companies in travel sector, they are higher. They're just like higher revenues than before the pandemic. Why? Because a lot of the customers they just went back to normal. But there's been an influx, like a big mass of people that were not in the market before, but this forced digital transformation caused by the pandemic, they converted them into customers of things that they would never have acquired. Yeah. So where are you now as in TravelPerk? Where would you say in terms of like revenue? Like, are you getting back of the ERTE?
Yeah. So 2 points that are interesting, I think. One is present and 2 is future, right? So,
yeah.
But immediate future in a way. So present is, we're still suffering. So the world is still under restrictions, and for us to go back to a usual kind of 3 to 4 times growth year on year, we need 3 things to happen. We need restrictions to be lifted. We need companies to allow travel, which is different from restrictions at the government level.
My God. Yeah.
And we need people to not fear travel. Right, yeah. And so people's psychology needs to support that. It's a bit like after 9/11, right? These 3 things need to happen. So of course we are still restricted by all 3, which means that overall as a business we're still suffering. Although there are some pockets where we actually are back to growing year on year. For example, domestic travel in Germany is already recovered. Domestic travel in the US is on the path of recovery, going back to growing year on year for us. It's driven by existing customers and new customers that we added during the crisis, which goes to the second point I said. So the first point is we're still not back to normal, which normal for us is explosive growth. In this regard, we're still suffering, and we're still under ERTE, etc. On the positive side, this acceleration that you described offline to online, we see it now. So as an example, our sales team, which worked in half capacity, we still work in half capacity because of, so we applied ERTE also in the sales team. And right now we have 50% of the working hours, and they achieved quota of 200% in the last 2 quarters. So with half the time, and this quota doesn't take into account the reduced time. So with half the time, they achieve double or overachieved by 100% the usual quota. And I think it's partially because they're amazing, our team, and 2, because the customers are completely now dropping the old school travel agencies and moving to modern, SaaS-based, SaaS solutions. And TravelPerk is kind of the only solution right now, at least in Europe. So
and also because a lot of travel agencies have shut down forever, so that must be part of the.
It's true. I don't want to be celebrated. Like it's not how I wanted to win.
No, of course not. Yeah. No, but this might have affected obviously. So internal KPIs, career plans, reporting to investors, because you raise big rounds. So therefore, yeah. I think the investors must be sympathetic towards the situation, right? But like, how do you transform this? I mean, obviously the KPIs you want, or the OKRs you wanted to achieve this year as a company, they need to be reshaped. You reshape the OKRs, then you need to reshape the teams, right? sometimes. How have you rebalanced teams? Like obviously there's been the reduction of the working times, but how have you like rebalanced teams? How have people taken it? Were people flexible to switch teams or roles or not? Or how is it?
Yeah, so definitely changed. So it's funny because we kicked off the year in January. We rented a nice cinema, a movie theater in Gracia, and we had like a nice event, and we kicked off the year. We have 5 pillars for the year that we're going to achieve, strategic pillars, and we're going to do I promised everybody a snow party, and I had in mind like to take the whole company to Andorra for a ski trip if we achieve the goal. So anyway, we had an amazing kickoff, and then like a month later, a pandemic comes. So anyway, what we did is we just scratched everything. We just deleted the year. We deleted these 5 pillars. We deleted the strategy. We just restarted from the beginning. And we set 3 strategic goals for the pandemic or the wartime, as you correctly stated. Survive is number 1, so preserve cash and make sure we don't run out of cash. Number 2 is to emerge strong. So we will be successful in long term, and we need to make sure that we don't cut too much into the muscle and to the bone, so that once the recovery comes, we have a team, we have a product, we have customers, so that we can bounce back quickly, and we don't have to lose a year or 2 years of rebuilding everything. And the third strategic priority was to turn lemons into lemonade. So use opportunities that the crisis has created that didn't exist before. So for example, we did our first ever acquisition. We went and acquired a Barcelona early stage company called Albatross that was actually created during the pandemic. So super smart guy, let go, called Rafael, and he saw this opportunity to provide an API for COVID-related information. And he pitched to us as a customer. We're like that's an amazing idea. The product was impressive. The team was impressive. We just bought them. And
it was early though. How many months had they been like?
I think it's the fastest exit in Spanish history, like 2 months or something. Yeah, I'm not even sure if there was. Anyway, it was a fast turnaround for Rafael and the team. So great stuff. And actually today announced we announced a platform play, and Albatross API, will be a part of that marketplace in our platform, in our open API approach. So we just basically, to answer your question, we just deleted the priorities of the year. We started with new wartime priorities, these 3 priorities. We created a war cabinet, which was called the war cabinet, made of 3 people from the leadership team, whose entire job was to execute on the strategy of surviving and emerging strong and turning lemons into lemonade. So we literally changed the whole company to focus on the war.
And you're a product company, right? And one of the things that we have seen in especially, growth stage companies, if you will, at least past Series A, companies tend to diversify or emerge with 3 or 4 different products, that because for one project, they kind of like spun off something else. You got this other idea here and there. Maybe you got some internal tools that end up being like full core products. And I've seen in companies, companies I've invested, companies we're working for, something like that the main product was not selling because it was directly tied to, travel or whatever. But there was this other product, a byproduct of the company that boom, went through the roof. Have you had this in the company? Have you had in TravelPerk something else that you could at least monetize through?
We are extremely focused in what we do, which means that we are very disciplined in saying no to everything else.
All right.
It has pros and cons, and one of the pros is we're building an amazing product which beats completely anything that exists in the market. One of the cons is we don't have these backup plans in case a pandemic comes. So we are still extremely focused on travel and on our core business, and that's how I predict that it will continue.
However, today you've announced something, right? The launch of the...
It's a part of the plan, though. It's a part
of the plan, right? So can you tell us a little bit more about that? Is it related to the Albatross acquisition? I hope so. But can you give us more details as to how we, as customers of TravelPerk, can profit from using the API?
Yeah, so the large vision is and I'll tell you a secret here, but I hope we're only 60 people, so we can keep it between us.
And the streaming people, but yeah, you can see like 60 more people, something like that.
Yeah, so let's keep it in a small group. So let's keep it between us.
Yeah.
And so here's our master plan, the secret master plan of TravelPerk. We're building a modern travel agency as an excuse. So the travel agency, the one where you book your flights and hotels and Airbnb and car rental and rail, is an excuse. It's an excuse to rebuild the tech stack that runs travel. And many companies tried by building pieces of the puzzle. I've seen it. I've been in travel for 15 years now. And I've seen many companies try, I'll make an app to open your hotel room when you check in, so you don't have to go to the reception. The problem always is that in order for them to be successful, they have to find a way to integrate to everybody else. And this industry is not built for collaborative integrations. It's the opposite of that. It's a very siloed, old school. All the systems that still run are GDSs from the 60s, you know? And
like Amadeus and things like that, right? Oh my God.
And they're one of the largest companies in the industry, actually.
Yeah.
So we realized that we cannot fix it by building Lego pieces. We have to basically throw it out and rebuild the whole stack. So the excuse is the TMC, the travel management company, travel agency. But the real goal here is to build the travel tech stack from scratch. The platform is the next step in that strategy. So the idea is we have our own travel agency. So we built all the tools that a travel agency needs for ourselves. Now let's open up the platform for partners and for customers to build on top of it. So as an example of what can be done, one of our customers, and I hope we can announce the case study and the name soon. This is an end customer, right? It's not a partner. It's a customer that is using TravelPerk to book their own trips. They wanted to have a more elaborate approval process for trips because they decided how they want to do approval, and which is not how we do approval. The old way of doing it is to bespoke, customize the product and basically have a bloated piece of software that nobody can maintain. It becomes shit after 5 years. If you're lucky, probably less. The new ways is we go to them and say, here's an API. This is, give us a webhook or whatever, like features. But here's an API where you can be notified before a trip is booked, do your approval on the site, just reply to us back to the API if the trip is approved or not. And we'll take it from there. So they are building the logic of approval internally away from the product. Just one example. So the one example is customers building on top of our functionality for internal processes for them. So to automate, if you want to automate your company, which you should, everybody should automate their company. It's a way more scalable and efficient way of building. You need RPI so you can plug in travel and expense into different parts of your own company. A new employee joins, you want them to have a travel account, set up the card, like all of this stuff, you can make it happen automatically through the API. The other use case is for partners, so you want to integrate TravelPerk to a payment card. You have many, many different payment cards today, Spendesk and Brex and Revolut and Divey and M26 and Monzo. So you have many companies doing payment cards for companies, B2B. And instead of us choosing a silo approach of we will provide the card and you cannot choose anything else, which basically means that we will end up having a mediocre product in every vertical. We are, as I said, very focused on travel. We'll just give you a way to integrate to anybody that you want from a marketplace. So if you're using Divey or N26 or Revolut or Monzo, you just go to a marketplace and you click connect TravelPerk to my Monzo account, boom, it's connected. And now the payments on Monzo go to TravelPerk bookings go to Monzo. When people book a trip, we can settle the payment for you. When they travel, like you just make the connection happen seamlessly for the end user. So the second idea is a marketplace for travel-related products. The first use cases are HR systems, expense management systems, payment cards, ERP, invoicing, etc., like Xero invoicing platform, etc. So travel-related integrations will be the second use case. So one is self-consume API. Second is marketplace. And we didn't invent any of that. Look at Slack. That's literally the strategy that they have for the platform. And that's what we're following.
Actually, becoming a marketplace, becoming a platform is a really interesting move. I mean, that's what Amazon did. That's what iTunes did. That's what, Messenger, back in the day with the gaming, Facebook started like this. So because you're sort of outsourcing the ideas, outsourcing development, people are creating products for you. You can give them exposure, but they will promote your platform in turn. So it's a really smart move. So congratulations on that one. Yeah. I wish TravelPerk, in the near midterm would become sort of the all-in-one travel agency for me, but even at a personal level, because, I use Skyscanner. Skyscanner is great, but you will never book things through Skyscanner. You go to the airline, then you go to the airline, the price has changed. The airline's websites, some of them, especially Welling, their UX sucks, right? But we got one thing in common. You and I love trains, right? And you're a huge proponent of trains. Yeah. Let's travel more with trains. What happens? The websites are fucking disgusting. They're really bad. The UX is really bad. and they're really expensive, right? Is there any way that we can speed up the evolution of the sector through this new platform, through this new API, to help you to sort of become this central travel agency for everyone?
You mean adding the leisure side in the
let's put it this way. I mean, I know you're extremely focused on B2B because you built TravelPerk precisely because Booking didn't want to build the B2B, right? But is there any way, any slight possibility that you might go into the B2C someday?
Listen, business travel is a $1.5 trillion market.
That's what Booking.com said. So don't give me that one.
and we have so much to do within that.
Yeah.
I never say never, but right now we're very focused on business travel. I have to say though, many of our users, including me, are using TravelPerk for personal trips. It's different if so you can do it. The only question is, are we building it for that use case? And the answer is no. Sometimes it will have a bit of, for example, you cannot book for children on the platform yet because most business trips don't involve children. So this, I mean, sometimes it has a few gaps, but overall, I'm using it personally, of course.
I sign up to use it personally, actually. So the two quick questions to wrap this up, and we're very thankful for your generosity of this time. First of all, is people want to hear your answer in this. I know it's a very lazy question, but when is business travel gonna pick up again?
So I have a running bet on Twitter. I'm willing to I'm continuing to take the bet with anybody who wants to do it. My bet is that 2021 will be a better year for business travel than 2019. Not 2020, 2019, which is a very, funny, I'm the most aggressive person right now in the industry, at least from those I spoke to. So that's my bet, that next year, I think the recovery will be faster than we think.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult to, we are in the middle of a pandemic still. It's very difficult to imagine how the present doesn't continue forever. But, if past has taught us anything, is things can evolve and change very rapidly. We have a lot of leading indicators telling us that it's coming from our data and just reading about it. So I think that next year will be already recovering.
I mean, what's your biggest fuck up as a CEO of TravelPerk? And if possible, can you quantify it in money? Most expensive fuck up.
So, without getting into details that I'm not allowed to legally, but taking a too expensive office it cost us millions of euros of fuck up. And it was completely useless. I will not get into more details because I'm not allowed to, but be careful. My advice is be careful in long-term commitments.
Yeah. You couldn't predict the pandemic. But anyways, we don't want you to get in trouble because we need to interview you again when this is over. So we want you to
still do it from jail maybe. So just find me in jail and we can talk.
Over Zoom, everything is possible. Last one, and we wrap this up, is everybody has got a useless superpower. Everybody has got superpowers. Everybody's like, I have like very good memory. Like I can do this, I can do that. But a useless superpower, something you do extremely well, but it's fucking useless, right? Like I always manage to misplace my keys. I lock the car, but I walk away 50 meters. I was like, oh, fuck, did I lock the car? And then I have to go back every time. That's a useless superpower. What's yours?
Got it. So mine is extremely useless. It's actually not useless. It's dangerous.
That's interesting. Let's get into it.
So I identify before my wife is about to make a mistake. I can see it. So she's about to lose her keys, and she always loses the keys everywhere. And I see her dropping the keys in a place that I know she's going to lose it. I identify it before and then the question is, do you tell her before, and then she gets pissed off at you that you told her, or you don't tell her, and then you're an asshole, right? So that's extremely dangerous. It's not even useless. It's dangerous. Superpower is identify the mistakes. And she, by the way, honey, if you never make mistakes, okay? If you're watching this, you're perfect. You never make mistakes. You see, this is my superpower. It's
amazing because it would be useful. It would be useful, but you're in sort of a lose-lose situation, right? So you kind of like turn it the other round. Like, oh, it's one of the best answers that somebody has given to me. All right. Any parting words before we wrap this up? Have you something you want to share? We might not have to talk about it, and then I can shut up forever.
So, of course, everybody's watching is a traveler. Hopefully, will go back to traveling. Already is traveling, maybe. So, if you're not on TravelPerk, you definitely should be on TravelPerk. That's my plug. And Yeah, use TravelPerk. That's a plug.
Use it. It's a good product built in
It
Barcelona. We should support companies being built in Barcelona. Thank you very much, Avi.
I agree.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everybody. Make sure that you are watching our next events. I know we haven't put up the next event. You usually announce the next events in advance, but there's a pandemic for those who have not heard it, and a lot of people are not ready to take commitments, so it's a little bit crazy. So any suggestion for speakers, kind of let us know. We do have somebody from October, haven't announced it yet for some legal reasons, but if you got great suggestions, keep them coming, because Avi has been one of them, people pushing us forever to get Avi on Startup Brand. So we'll continue to host amazing people. We learned a lot today. So thank you very much, Avi. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Wrap it up.